All right, welcome to Tech Talk Live. It is Tuesday, April 15th. I'm Jack Armstrong here in Los Angeles.
And I'm Sam Giacinto here in the DMV, Washington, D.C. And you're listening to Tech Talk Live. Welcome to the show. Chat or call in with your tech news or questions. As usual, lots to talk about. Before we get started, Tech Talk Live loves Before Sunset AI. Before Sunset AI is your productivity superhero. Code Tech Talk Live for 3 months free to conquer your conquests with Before Sunset AI. Diving in,
Absolutely.
we need to
Diving
talk
right in. Absolutely.
One ID.
One ID. Yeah. So this is quite a big initiative that airports, regulatory bodies all around the world, and airlines are all pushing for. And essentially, it aims to have a more seamless experience for all travelers. But the catch is that you have to give up your personal biometric information. I guess would be a good way to put it, right?
Whoopsie, right?
Yeah. Like, oh, okay, so it's more convenient, but now we lack privacy. So essentially, people can scan. So contactless is the main theme here. I don't know if you'd agree with that, but contactless is like the name of the game. They don't want you to even technically need to tap your phone. Your face is your passport, which is cool, but I think to get all of this to work, it's a little complicated. So anyway, to give a little more information about it, the IATA is the governing authority that is kind of offering this proposal about one ID. And so obviously, air passenger numbers are expected to double by 2041. And this initiative is streamlining passenger journeys, really, so that you can simply present your face and you don't need to repeatedly present travel documents all over the place. So in the future, we might need to scan our faces uh, before entering the airport or even before buying a ticket. It's really crazy. I don't know if you've flown lately and, seen the clear lanes, but also some, some airlines are making you scan your passport and do a face scan before checking in for your boarding pass and even getting to the airport, which you can do all on your phone.
So they have a one pager essentially that kind of walks you through the process. Um, the proposed process. And you mentioned that some airlines are already kind of doing something like this. But before your trip, you would create a digital identity with your visa or your passport and your digital wallet. You would share this electronically and be issued an approval to travel by the foreign government. Um, and the airline would receive that approval and your digital identity, to which they would give you your boarding pass. And then essentially, you would only need to show your face at the airport. Now, it sounds very convenient. And on the surface, it, feels very convenient. Um, but even in this, kind of beautiful little graphic document with smiling stick figures, there's a lot of information being exchanged between quite a few entities, right? So government, right? It could be one of any, 180 countries. Airline, it could be one of, hundreds of airlines, all with varying implementation standards, let's just say, of the security protocols. And, quite honestly, biometric data is data of your personal being. So it's something that, once it's stolen, you can't exactly change what your face looks like. So this is kind of where the importance of privacy is very much, exaggerated, because if somebody does take your digital ID, what's to stop them from, I mean, traveling, with, you know, I
Yeah.
guess maybe their face wouldn't match at the,
I guess, yeah. Yeah, to play
contactless
devil's advocate.
point, right?
Yeah.
But, I mean, for the same issues with Face ID, right? I mean, it's sort of like, identical twins. I mean, there are edge cases which, you know, I mean, I don't know how this contactless system would work in kind of those, and obviously it's very rare, but you know, there's still kind of the caveats that we have with traditional biometrics. Not to mention the huge, huge, huge data privacy risks of having, not one, not two, but hundreds of parties with access to your most sensitive information.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. I mean, it would be interesting. I mean, I can't imagine going to the airport these days and just not even needing a boarding pass or even to check in. I mean, theoretically, you could just walk right into the airport, go to your gate, and you would never need to check in, present a boarding pass. I mean, like your face. I do think, biometric privacy should be, I think, a little bit more, you know, in front of people's attention. However, I think you bring up a good point. You can't replicate my face. So like
For,
you couldn't
for now.
I mean so I mean yeah, no, you're right, but it's like all right, so how would somebody take your biometric data and steal it? Do you know what I mean? Like how would that even work?
Well, it's, and I mean, this is kind of going back to the, fundamentals of cybersecurity, right? Confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Um, it's like when your data is at rest, sitting somewhere, is it protected? So like going to how they would actually steal it. I mean, they could steal it when it's sitting somewhere, either in the airline's database or the government's database. They could try and steal it in transit. When it's moving from one source to another. I mean, there's a lot of ways to actually do. I mean, there could be malware on your phone that kind of sits behind really all of the integrity measures, and basically just screen records to bypass. I mean, that's a convenient way to bypass all the encryption. I mean, you can have all the security in the world, but if you're capturing what the user is seeing at the end of the day, um a lot of information is made is made available, because like the user, what's being displayed visually is kind of the end, decrypted. It goes through all this, safety and security and protocol and processing to be decrypted and shown to the user in English or in plain text. So that's another option. I mean, there's a lot of ways to kind of, you know, circumvent this, these protections, and the data itself is very important. Um, so that kind of presents a problem, right? Because it's such a, it's such a there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen per se, especially with airlines and governments, and not everybody has this stellar record of security. I mean, it's a very ambitious plan, not to immediately be against it, but this is an ambitious effort. Um,
Yeah.
and considering how you mentioned Clear earlier, I mean, Clear has had a lot of high profile incidents where they have either, not performed proper background checks or just, let people through or otherwise like have had, data breaches. I'm not entirely familiar with all of them, right? But there have been some security
Yeah.
questions around Clear. And this is, Clear is kind of, I feel like the test case to something larger and more ambitious like IATA is proposing. So
Yeah. Well,
I
so
think
it's
we should look
also
at
worth
that.
noting. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, we talk all the time too. Like, I think this is going to replace a lot of humans at the airport. I mean, this is going to reduce costs, but also, a lot of airport workers and staff are going to be laid off if something like this were implemented. So I think it's worth noting that too. And truly, like, yes, everyone wants to go through the airport faster, and if everyone's going to go through faster, then yeah, you don't need to pay for something like Clear. So
Well,
yeah,
who
new
doesn't,
standards.
right? Like, do you want to go slower through the airport, right? Like it's the classic, convenience versus security, you know,
Yeah,
paradigm where it's like, is it more convenient? Absolutely. Is it more secure? Maybe, maybe not. Right. I mean, I don't
maybe, yeah,
know.
yeah,
I don't know. I mean, this is kind of one of those things we'll have to
yeah.
wait and see. I probably won't be the first one to sign up for it. Um, we'll just kind of let it play out and, never be a beta tester for something you have to pay for. Right.
Yeah, no, I know, I know. Well, it's also worth noting that the European Aviation Safety Administration, did I get that right? Aviation Safety Agency, excuse me. They have piloted this. There was a pilot program in Amsterdam, London, and Frankfurt to help assess its feasibility. So, yeah, I think it's worth noting that, you know, it seems like it does increase in the medium and long term efficiency, but it I think eventually they are going to need to solve the capacity problem, and this is a good way to do so. But I think that how to actually manage the data is tough. And I think with encryption protocols, I mean, you talked about it. I mean, biometric data can be hacked in transit. I mean, what about, I mean, yeah, how do you anonymize this? I mean, so if someone got their hands on it, it doesn't mean anything to them. Like, there has to be a better way to protect, travelers and just people. And so I don't know if there's a way, I know we've talked about the World ID and of course Sam Altman's biometric verification company.
Yeah. No, I
So
mean,
so
that's
yeah,
well, I mean, we talked about the orb, right, and Worldcoin, um, and that kind of biometric, right,
yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm
that kind
talking.
of
Yeah, that's exactly.
biometric application, right? Um,
Yeah. But that's not tied to your identity. That's the difference. And I think, I don't know, I mean, maybe that doesn't make it a target, but yeah, I think it's still to be seen, yeah, how your data is going to be managed. And there's a lot of questions. So anyway, yeah, Shelby, interesting to see.
yeah, no, and talking especially of about security and fairness. Um, an interesting article that I came across. Apple and the Machine Learning Research Division put out an article about how they essentially train their AI while maintaining user privacy. And this is something,
Yeah.
again, this is quite interesting, because Apple, essentially what they're doing is, they have a large, um, most, well, taking it back, right? Most artificial intelligence companies' data is kind of the new gold. We need a large pool of data to train our models on, and we, basically, use exact user prompts and user information to train our models. So Apple has kind of created this novel way of generating synthetic data to accomplish sort of the same mission of improving the output of their models without exactly copying your data, right? So how does this work, right? We have a
Yeah.
group of devices. Apple essentially, polls the devices for, I guess, the presence or absence of a certain pattern, um, and sort of creates a
And
signal, more or less. So they don't query any specific device for any specific term, but rather an aggregation of the summary of devices where, you know they're able to determine, well, what prompts are popular based on, you know what does the signal look like from essentially all of our, pulled devices, right? So
yeah.
for the devices
So
the most
they're still building a profile on you. They're still building a profile. Well, I guess not on you, but on your device based on what it's likely. Yeah, the graphic is a little interesting to it's a little confusing because of the colors and the numbers mean the same thing, but then like they learn which synthetic emails are most often selected across devices.
well you
So like
so you're close, right? So they're not, and from my understanding is they're not developing a profile of your device specifically, but rather, what is the most common of all devices, and then using that variant as, essentially, this is the most common, you know, prompt, essentially. Um, and then, using that to kind of gauge, you know, what users actually want without building a specific profile on your data specifically, right? I guess, does that kind of make sense? It's almost like you're taking a poll of 10 people and you're not aware of what any individual person is saying, but you just know that 6 out of 10 people are, creating a Genmoji prompt with duck riding a dinosaur or something. Like, that's kind of like, because we were able to query, duck shows up in 7 of them and dinosaur shows up in 8 of them or something. And
yeah,
then,
yeah,
sort of, so that's, so basically Apple only sees the aggregation of these symbols and cannot see the individual signal associated with any particular device. Nor do they supposedly copy any individual prompt. So, taking this a step back, it's almost like they're creating a fingerprint of devices at large without linking that to any specific person, right? It's kind of like a heat map of what users are requesting.
yeah.
Does that kind of make sense? At least
Well,
that's my
so
best
yeah.
interpretation of, their research article here.
Well, so to me, it's interesting why they don't why why they don't run a light model. Like you could just run a light model, right? Like on your phone and then send to the cloud, maybe anonymized versions encrypted, that is you, but maybe their servers won't know it's you. So I mean, this is an interesting way to approach it. but like I feel like it's not. I'm lacking to see how this differential synthetic, what do they call it? A privacy uh, protection model. I see that, yeah, it's going to protect your privacy because the AI is going to know nothing of you or nothing about you. So I don't know. Like,
Well, and I mean, to your point, that's kind of exactly what they're
like
doing in a way, right? So they're
how
generating
the AI
synthetic
has
data.
to be relevant.
But you mentioned the small model, right? So they generate synthetic, for example, a synthetic email, right? And they provide it to your device. And from this synthetic email, you create an embedding of that email. So, sort of, it captures the language, the topic, the length of the email. And, this metadata is sent to a small number of devices that essentially run that same embedding, algorithm, more or less, and then compares the two embeddings. So there's never any, so your data does not ever leave your device, but rather Apple kind of creates a copy and then says, okay, here are the characteristics of this copy. And then here are the characteristics of your email. How close are they? If they're really close for a lot of devices, we're on to something. That's some good synthetic data. Let's use it to train our model, right? So it's fingerprinting synthetic data and comparing it to a fingerprint of your data, if that makes sense. And all of that embedding probably occurs on device. They're not specific about it. They really just say it's it's generated. It's computed. Um, I assume on the device, given Apple's whole spiel, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't know if that makes any sense, but I just think that it's really quite fascinating because yeah, your data never leaves your device and is never directly compared, but rather an embedding of it is compared to fake data, computed, so basically two sets of data, fingerprints, they're compared to each other instead
Well,
of
so we were, yeah, no, no, no. Well, we were talking about running models on our own devices as being the most secure way, right, to do AI. I think the synthetic model is great, but someone has to do a comparison because, I mean, if you want AI to understand you and understand your requests, and if you're going to use it, fine tune to your specific use case, and you want that technology to work for you to the fullest extent possible because it knows you and not just a fingerprint of you, that it compared with synthetic data and thinks it matches up. Yeah, it's a little weird. Like, yeah. Like, so I would be intrigued maybe to do a comparison, because if you run a model on your device, that data is not stored. And the model, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but can't it send anonymized data to, let's say, OpenAI servers or Anthropic servers? So anyway, this is getting a little technical, but like Apple's taking a very interesting approach here, and I still feel like yes, they have to keep their privacy focus, but like it I don't know. It's going to be interesting because Apple is behind in the AI race. Right now, Apple is behind in the AI race. There's no doubt about it. I mean, Gemini is getting like so much press lately with the 2.5 Pro, deep research, even Sonar Perplexity. I saw today. I mean, it was from Perplexity, but they just reached the charts for the search. What do they call it? The search environment of just the web and AI. And so Sonar from Perplexity, which we've already known is a great search experience for AI search. But no, I mean, I think this is just like Apple doesn't have I mean, think about it. They launched the iPhone 16 with Apple Intelligence, yet there's not even Apple Intelligence where I can go and have a Chat GPT like experience. I mean, it's crazy to me. And like the studio, I don't know if you know what I mean, like uh the creating the images, not the Genmoji. Actually, I think it is kind of like their Genmoji. But yeah, like it's it just is lacking right now, the experience of AI built into their devices. I mean, even in the photo editing, like built into your iPhone, it can't upscale your photos. It can't magic edit them based on a prompt. I mean, like Apple has so much potential, you know what I mean? But they're like really not seizing it. And I mean, it's crazy to me with how much research and funding, like they have so much capital. Why are they not like number one right now? Like, I mean, OpenAI, of course, is the first mover with ChatGPT, but like the iPhone is in everyone's pockets. Like, why, if you buy the iPhone 16, like why is ChatGPT, plus not a subscription included with Apple One or something if they have to make it, into their core product? Like it just add more value to your product. Like if you want people to buy an iPhone, don't mislead them because AI really is not here on the iPhone. Do you know what I mean? We talked about that
Well,
last week.
and that's kind of the double-edged sword, right? And this is, again, while this is very fascinating, it's, this layer of, essentially, so on one end of the spectrum, right, we have Apple, who is sort of going out of their way to anonymize data and, essentially have the data in which it trains its models on be, abstracted, or, essentially, preserve the user privacy. On the other end of this, just kind of tangent topic, you have, Jack Dorsey and Meta, or Mark, trying to, or it may have been Elon, sorry, Mark, allegedly, trying to get rid of, intellectual property law to kind of free up, who needs copyright laws or copyright. We need to train our models on data, and we don't want to really spend the time of, obtaining permission to use it. So while Apple is certainly, among the, they're definitely among the, you know, this is kind of adding layers of time and complexity to something that other people really aren't bothering with. It's kind of the, so while it's still interesting, you're absolutely right. I mean, this delays, I mean, this kind of like, it kind of hampers their AI, like it kind of hamstrings their AI. Uh, because, to put simply, privacy isn't a priority for other AI, or for other AI models. So something to think about. Um,
No, absolutely. No, yeah, I mean, I feel like privacy with property rights though, it's a little bit different in my opinion because um I personally believe that if you put something on the internet, you want it to be discovered. Now, I understand you don't necessarily want that to be available for AI scraping, bots that come and take your data for their training, right? But like it is on the internet, and that's part of, I mean, I'm sorry to say that, but like you're putting your photos on the internet. You know that people do weird things with technology. I mean, your photo could end up somewhere you never expected it if you put something up. And I think it's just like that's kind of part about the internet. Like, the internet is a wild place. Don't forget that, you know? So, the internet is a wild place. And yeah, well, we should jump to our next story, which is a fascinating one about how views are tracked across different platforms on the internet.
No, and this is quite interesting. Okay, because for social media, metrics are everything, right? It's about the views. It's how we judge ourselves, right? When we're doing this podcast, right? How many views do we get? And just really like everything else on the internet, it can basically just be made up. There's really no set standard for defining, well, what is a view? You would expect, oh, like maybe it's the number of times somebody's seen something, or maybe more loosely, the number of times it's been displayed on a screen. For other, entities, they define it as, oh, well, for Netflix, you need to watch, you know, uh, watch 2 minutes of a show. Um, so it's essentially there's a different standard per platform is really the shorthand version, and
Yeah.
there's really no unifying standard of anything. Um,
Of what's
and
defined as a view, a listen, different platforms. Yeah, because I think it is fascinating, which I never really thought before. But when you're on TikTok or even, Instagram, you see a lot of videos at the same time. And I know you didn't click on them, but you're still, I mean, they're still loading on your device, right?
yeah, no, I mean, or like, like, did you just scroll past it, right? I mean, it showed
Yeah.
up on your screen for like a second.
Yeah.
Um, it's so essentially it's to kind of put it into an analogy, it's like if you're walking around at Best Buy and you walk past the TV playing Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End, and it would technically count you as a viewer of the movie, because you were
Yeah.
just um so it's you know and it's funny because at least in this aspect, right, Facebook or Meta, they kind of tacitly acknowledge this and sort of offer two different numbers, one of them being 3-second video views and the other being 1-minute video views. So sort of like,
Yeah.
was it just somebody auto playing this stuff in the background, or um you know is this something the user intentionally clicked on?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, view counts, I think it's kind of like fake followers. I think, bots can watch videos. You could, again, click farms can inflate video views. I mean, what, okay, a view. Did they click it for 1 second? I mean, 10 seconds. I mean, yeah, exactly. You have a great point. Like, how long did the viewers, I mean, 1,000 views? Okay. That's 1,000 people. It's at 500 people playing it twice. You know what I mean? I mean, no, it's probably not 500 people playing it twice, right? But like, you click it, you watch half of it. Okay, that counts as a view, but like, yeah, 3 seconds. How far are they watching? It is a little complicated, and I feel like I don't know if you'd agree with this, but like it seems like Meta and Instagram have the most generous view counts. Is that like it just kind of tracks like even like a click as a view? Seems like. I know you were kind of going over them all. You seem to have a better understanding of, yeah, Netflix. For example, like the 2 minute. You have to watch for
Well,
two
that's
minutes
an
for it to be an
example,
intervention.
right?
Yeah.
That's an example. Um, and again, just kind of an example of a different standard, right? 2 minutes versus MetaTrack's minute playthroughs or 3 second playthroughs, or really just the amount of times things have shown up on screen. Um,
Yeah.
you know, um, so I don't, I, and again, I don't know if there's like a lesson to be learned here, per se, but it's kind of one of those things where it's like, don't get too hung up on these kind of made up numbers of how views are calculated, right? Um, it's essentially it's and it's kind of sort of inflationary in a way where it's like, well, again, like if you don't see your views going up on a platform, you may not be, you know, motivated to post there. Um, you know,
Yeah.
so and creators may decide, hey, I'm gonna post to another platform that perhaps maybe more loosely counts the number of views, and then you get more views, and that's more validating. Same thing with advertisers. I mean, this is not to toss the word of fraud around, but it's just sort of like, again, if you are selling ad space and this is kind of how you count views, how do you even know if they viewed the advertisement, or like created an impression on the advertisement? A lot of this stuff is just sort of, well, if it just crossed their screen. Um, and it's and perhaps the pitfall to all this is there even a good metric to track, right? I mean, is there something, that because like what are you trying to measure, right? It's genuine organic engagement with a virtual product, right?
Yeah.
Um and the thing is like it's not exactly like these platforms don't know what is being viewed, right? They know every second of your activity on these platforms, and they're essentially, not going to tell you, um, you know, because why would they, right? I mean, they may tell advertisers, um, but it's just something to keep in mind, right?
Yeah.
When when you essentially are,
Well, but they mean different things to different platforms. I think a click and a view doesn't mean you finished the content. That's, I think, what speaks to me about the situation. Like a view could just mean you clicked on it, right? Like it
yeah,
loaded for a second and that's a view. And then like, but it's not clear. What if you scroll back up? Does that count as a second view? So it's interesting like how views are counted. And I know, speaking of what you were saying with podcasts, I mean, yeah, we always look like, how many listens, downloads, streams, plays. I mean, and keep in mind, um, podcasts are a little different because they're hosted on a server that delivers the content to kind of as like, the master library where it's stored, the database where your podcast where the house is, right? Where your podcast's house is. I guess is kind of an interesting way to think about it. But uh I bring that up to say that yeah, like different platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, they all have to look at that house. And it's like if you click on the episode for a second, I mean, that counts as a play. You didn't finish it, but like I mean, I don't think there's even a listen requirement. I think like as long as a unique user clicked on it, they know what country the data was sent to. Like they know where you're coming from, right? But a stream and a listen, you know, kind of the same between a click, a view in the podcast space. And of course, what's interesting, I mean, you can't with a podcast, you don't know. Only the show knows the stats. Just kind of like a website with website traffic. There's not a counter at the bottom of the site that says this site got 1,000, plays in the last hour or clicks in the last hour. So you don't really know unless you're the website owner. It's just like the podcast. Nobody really knows. I mean, people can see the subscribers on YouTube, but that's why it's so interesting on social media and platforms like YouTube because it's so transparent. Then also, like, we're talking about, and The Verge did an excellent write up. So if anybody's listening and, go search on The Verge, views are lies, views in quotes. Again, consider, like they say, consider this a reminder or a PSA. A view on the internet means less than you think. So, it's just this kind of number that we've all agreed is important because it seems to show how many people have engaged with our content, but also, at the same time, it means less than you think. And I think it's a great, great write up. So, look, I personally like how podcasts, because a lot of the times it's not important. It's kind of like, do you really need to see how many people clicked like on a video or dislike? I mean, I guess
Not
it's
anymore on YouTube,
silly.
right?
Yeah. But the host can. The host can still see this, but it's not public information. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah.
So yeah, it's quite interesting. So, well, keep your eyes tuned. Oh, and another thing, email subscribers comes to mind too. When you get an email, you don't know how many people are on the list. And also speaking of tracking, I'm a huge fan of what Data Bar, of course, is a great platform, for running databases. But are you familiar with SimilarWeb and SpyFu? These are companies that track SEO data.
I can't say I'm an SEO expert, right?
So,
Um,
well, it's even
but
more than SEO, and it's more than ads, and it's more than keywords. But quickly to summarize, again, it is very fascinating. What's a view? What's a click? What's a watch? What's a listen? Or on Spotify or the streams, streaming. But I think it's really fascinating because the data of how you can actually look up a website on SimilarWeb, okay, and you can. They claim to know with pretty good accuracy how many views that website has gotten this month. Like they basically run stats on website traffic. But again, like how are they estimating these things? Like sure they've got beacons and maybe some users are opting into browser extensions, was a big one, how they were getting the data. Don't know if you know that, of course, Chrome, but some browser extensions, actually read your browsing history and report that. Maybe SimilarWeb buys it. Again, I think some of that data is very valuable for companies to estimate their competitors. Oh, how big is this company? And I'll tell you, like, it's really not that hard to go online, use their tool, and look up, what's their view, or how many people are hitting their website, what's their website traffic, right? So I think that's a very interesting thing, kind of fits in this topic, but again, like I think the numbers don't really make sense because they can be inflated because it's an estimate, and even like one thing I think is fascinating with a website I track, it's my site. I use two different analytics platforms, and the numbers for the 30 and 90-day numbers are never exactly the same. And that I think goes back to how bot traffic is calculated, and AI scrapers, and I think maybe one platform might know more about the user or the computer that just clicked on the site. They might know that's a bot, that's a server, that's a web crawler or something like that. So yeah, web traffic views is a very interesting discussion. And yeah, hope this was an insightful conversation.
Yeah, no, I mean SEO, certainly another I mean, we could have a whole episode on SEO individually.
Well,
Very related to views, right? And sort of getting, at least getting the device to the page to play the content, right? Autoplay or not, is a big thing. Um,
yeah.
can't say I'm too familiar though. I'll be honest.
I mean, I think nowadays you'd be surprised, of course. I mean, not, with ChatGPT though, AI visibility is like the new SEO, you know, and it's fascinating because how do you get your company in the AI models, right? So I think AI visibility is becoming the new SEO, and I think there are tools that are starting to track keywords that are mentioned in AI responses. So it's not really about how many times the user asked the AI, it's more about how many times the AI model gave the answer. Do you see what I'm saying? So if you ask about your company to the AI 100 times, how many of those responses are going to mention your brand, your company, or whatever? That's AI visibility in a nutshell. Uh, Highlighted AI, I think I might have been telling you about this, Sam. It is a very valuable tool to track this. You track kind of keywords, but it's not really like keywords. You're tracking like prompt words. You're tracking the responses from the prompt. But also the weird thing at the end of the day, every user is going to ask a different prompt. You might say, what are the best pizza places in Washington, D.C.? You might also say, well, what are the best pizza places in Virginia or wherever, or Maryland? Or so, do you know what I mean? Like, I think it's very interesting because every user asks a different prompt, even though they might expect the AI to give the same answer. So that's AI visibility. And again, kind of like, I don't know why we thought about this with the views, but it's like, do you know what I mean? Like, I guess, yeah, like more and more people are using Search GPT, Chat GPT, Perplexity, all these AI models, Claude. So I think it's more important than you think these days. Anyway.
Well, we'll have to come back next week to talk about this and more. Um,
Absolutely.
there's no shortage of AI. I mean, it's AI SEO, AI social media accounts, AI data generated. It's just,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
we've been doing this maybe 2 years, and there's still, I mean, there is a new topic every single week, and we're not just saying that. There literally is. I mean, the Apple article we talked about came out today. So it's just sort of like keeping up with it. Very much I mean, we're moving at 24-hour chunks at this point. So
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, check us out on the web at techtalklive.xyz. Subscribe to our newsletter and come back anywhere you get your podcasts. Tech Talk Live, search us. anywhere you get your podcasts. And we're live every Tuesday, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. See you next week.